And the Oscar goes to Clint Eastwood for Unforgiven.
Picture this. Beverly Hills, 1993. The lobby of the Four Seasons is packed. Producers in Armani suits, Oscar winners sipping whiskey, and near the grand piano stands Clint Eastwood alone, stone-faced, arms crossed, eyes cold and unreadable. Across the room, a young rising actor holds court. He's loud, charming, full of himself, laughing, name-dropping, spinning a story that ends with a cheap imitation of the old cowboy standing in the corner. The crowd bursts into laughter. Everyone except Clint. He says nothing, just finishes his drink, nods once to the bartender and walks out without a glance back. No outburst, no confrontation, just silence. The kind of silence that ends things. 4 years afterward, Hollywood whispered about that moment. What did Clint hear? What was said? And why did that actor's name suddenly vanish from Warner Brothers casting lists not long after? No one ever found out, because Clint Eastwood never explained. He didn't rant, didn't go to the press, didn't post a word. He just erased people quietly, coldly, permanently. But now at 94, the silence is starting to crack. In a few rare moments of honesty, the legend has begun to reveal a pattern. 5 names, 5 people he never forgave. The ones who mocked him, challenged his principles, or made the fatal mistake of thinking he'd forgotten. But they didn't just clash with a filmmaker. They crossed a man who lived by a code and never backed down. And first on that list, a documentary firebrand who tried to make his name by ridiculing Clint Eastwood's ideals. It wasn't funny to Clint. He didn't chuckle or clap back. He shut it down. The whole thing began as a quip. Or at least that's how Michael Moore treated it. At the 2005 National Board of Review Awards, Clint Eastwood stepped up and said flatly, "Michael Moore and I actually have a lot in common. We both appreciate documentaries, but if he ever shows up at my front door with a camera, I'll kill him." Nervous laughter, a few audible intakes of breath, no wink, no smile from Eastwood. The remark landed like a challenge, and the room stayed quiet. This was not a punchline. It was a line drawn. Moore never crossed it again, but that one moment only exposed a deeper split. Moore, then writing the controversy of Fahrenheit 9/11, a savage critique of the Bush era and the war after September 11th, had already set off alarms for Eastwood. Where Moore saw righteous outrage and screen-grabbing truth, Eastwood saw something else, a spectacle that cheapened sacrifice. By then, Eastwood wasn't just a face on screen. He had just wrapped Million Dollar Baby and was gearing up to bring Flags of Our Fathers to audiences. Films that to him treated American service and suffering with solemnity and care, not as fodder for headlines. To Clint, Moore's work felt less like documentary and more like exploitation. Their paths never converged after that. No collaborations, no shared frames, only a cold distance that began with a single unmistakable warning. If you asked Clint about it today, he'd probably just raise an eyebrow, let out a low grunt, and steer the conversation somewhere else. Eastwood doesn't do public feuds. He prefers quiet erasure. But Michael Moore wasn't the only filmmaker to test his patience. The next one went even further, accusing Clint of whitewashing history on a global stage. Spike Lee, a battle over history. Clint Eastwood almost never fires back, but in 2008 he made an exception, and it wasn't subtle. When Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima hit theaters, critics praised the ambitious dual project. 2 sides of the same war, one told through American eyes, the other Japanese. The films were raw, unflinching, and deeply human, but Spike Lee saw something missing. He publicly called Clint out for ignoring the Black Marines who fought and died at Iwo Jima, accusing Flags of Our Fathers of erasing their role. "You can't just pretend they weren't there," Spike said. Clint didn't respond with calm explanation or PR finesse. He shot back with something that sounded straight out of a Western. A guy like him should shut his face. It wasn't polite. It was explosive. The headlines ignited overnight. Spike fired right back. "I'm not going to shut up." He sounds like an angry old man. 4 days. The feud dominated Hollywood. 2 filmmaking giants. One the stoic cowboy traditionalist. The other the bold provocateur clashing in a public showdown that laid bare one of the industry's deepest divides. Who gets to tell America's story and from whose point of view? Many tried to explain it away to soften the edges or decode what Clint really meant, but he never bothered to clarify. That silence was the answer. To Eastwood, Flags of Our Fathers was about a specific group of men, a single story told through a particular lens. He wasn't interested in appeasing critics or filling quotas. He was interested in truth as he saw it. And no one, not even Spike Lee, was going to tell him how to make his film. Spike, on the other hand, saw it as something bigger, a matter of responsibility. To him, history wasn't just about who held the camera, but whose stories were left out of the frame. It wasn't just a disagreement over a movie. It was a clash over meaning, over legacy. And with two men as proud, principled, and immovable as Eastwood and Lee, middle ground never existed. They haven't spoken since. No shared panels, no red carpet greetings, no public acknowledgement of each other's work. Just a long, cold distance between two filmmaking titans. And if you thought Clint's temper only flared with fellow directors, think again. His next confrontation happened much closer to home, right on his own set, with one of the most famous actors in the world, a man who tested Eastwood's patience and came up short. Leonardo DiCaprio, method versus gunslinger. Two icons from two different schools of cinema. DiCaprio, the intense, meticulous method actor chasing emotional depth in every take. Eastwood, the old-school craftsman who prized instinct, silence, and efficiency. When Clint cast Leo as J. Edgar Hoover in 2011, the industry was electric. Old Hollywood met new intensity. But behind the scenes, sparks flew. The friction was there from day one. Eastwood's trademark directing style, one take, minimal rehearsal, no wasted motion, clashed with DiCaprio's layered, process-heavy approach. Clint called it instinct. Leo called it incomplete. What followed was less a collaboration than a quiet, simmering standoff. It was the complete opposite of how DiCaprio worked. Leo thrived on exploration, digging, refining, doing take after take until he found the emotional heartbeat of a scene. He asked questions, chased nuance, lived inside the moment. Clint, meanwhile, was already saying, "Cut, move on." While Leo hunted for depth, Eastwood was focused on momentum. People on set noticed. Whispers spread through the crew. One insider put it best. It was like watching a racehorse try to run in cowboy boots. There were no shouting matches, no walkouts, just a steady undercurrent of tension between two masters who saw filmmaking from opposite ends of the spectrum. DiCaprio tried to adjust. Eastwood didn't. The movie got finished, released, and then nothing. No second project, no kind words in interviews, no Oscar night acknowledgements. Clint, who often brings back actors he respects, Morgan Freeman, Bradley Cooper, Tom Hanks, never called Leo again. Some said it was just creative friction. Others claimed Clint found DiCaprio too intense, too theatrical, maybe even too self-absorbed. Either way, their paths split cleanly, and Eastwood never looked back. But if DiCaprio challenged Clint's control behind the camera, the next man on the list went a step further. He mocked Clint's legacy in front of the entire world. Seth Rogen, the sniper insult Clint. Some actors make quiet enemies. Seth Rogen made his loud. In 2014, Clint Eastwood released American Sniper, the story of Navy SEAL Chris Kyle. The film divided critics but dominated the box office, becoming a cultural flashpoint. For millions, it was a patriotic tribute. For Rogen, it was something else entirely. Just days after its release, he fired off a tweet, a throwaway joke that landed like a grenade and left Hollywood stunned. American Sniper kind of reminds me of that movie playing in the third act of Inglourious Basterds. You know, the one where the Nazi sniper is killing Allied soldiers. Seth Rogen didn't mention Clint Eastwood by name. He didn't have to. The implication was atomic, comparing American Sniper to Nazi propaganda. Rogen later claimed it was just a joke, but the fallout had already begun. Clint Eastwood didn't fire back. No tweets, no statements, no interviews. Because Clint doesn't do social media wars. He does silence. Cold, deliberate silence. But behind closed doors, those close to him said he was furious. Not just because of the insult, but because it was done in public. Drive-by jab disguised as humor. To Eastwood, that wasn't wit. It was cowardice. And though Rogen would later clarify that he wasn't calling American Sniper Nazi propaganda, the apology never landed. Not in Clint's inbox, and certainly not in his heart. From that moment on, Rogen's name vanished from Clint's world. He never mentioned him again, never entertained the idea of working with him, and reportedly made it clear to studio insiders. If Seth Rogen's name ever showed up on a casting list, it should disappear just as quietly. Because if there's one thing Clint Eastwood doesn't forgive, it's disrespect, especially from someone who hides mockery behind a smile. But the final name on that unspoken list wasn't a comedian or a provocateur. He was a peer, an equal, a co-star, and their rift didn't explode in public. It simmered in silence for years, right under Hollywood's nose. Gene Hackman, the rival, he couldn't direct. On-screen, they were electric. Off-screen, they barely spoke. In 1992, Clint Eastwood and Gene Hackman came together for Unforgiven, the film that redefined the Western and swept the Oscars. To the world, it looked like a seamless partnership between two legends. But behind those stoic performances, a quiet, stubborn tension was building, one that would test Eastwood's control more than any showdown he'd ever filmed. Clint Eastwood was known for running a set like a well-tuned watch, calm, precise, and built on mutual respect. He valued silence, focus, and control. Gene Hackman, on the other hand, was a different kind of force. Fiery, unpredictable, a man who thrived on challenge. Eastwood expected discipline. Hackman brought defiance. From the first week of shooting Unforgiven, people could sense the friction. Hackman didn't take direction easily. He'd interrupt Clint mid-instruction, question camera angles, push for rewrites. It wasn't open rebellion, it was pride. One crew member recalled a moment during a crucial scene. Hackman stopped mid-line, turned to Clint and said, "That line doesn't work, I'm not saying it." Eastwood didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. He just looked at Hackman for a long moment and replied softly but firmly, "You will." The room went silent. No yelling, no theatrics, just finality. From that point on, the tension hovered over the production like heat on a desert horizon. The two never clashed in public, but their silence was louder than any argument. There was respect between them, but warmth, none. When Unforgiven swept the Oscars, both men walked away as winners, but that was the last time they shared a set. Clint never hired Hackman again, never called him a favorite collaborator, and whenever he reminisced about the film, he'd name Morgan Freeman, Richard Harris, rarely, if ever, Gene Hackman. Those close to the production say the respect was genuine, but the relationship was beyond repair. Too much ego, too much friction, and in Clint's world, that meant one thing, one and done. Hackman would retire from acting not long after, while Eastwood continued to shape his films with precision, choosing his cast and crew carefully. Because for Clint, chemistry wasn't about star power, it was about trust. And once that trust cracked, it was over. Two legends, one masterpiece, and a silence that never broke. Because when Clint Eastwood closes a door, it stays closed, the silence of the gunslinger. Clint Eastwood never needed to shout to make his point. He didn't rant, didn't gossip, didn't take his grudges to the press. He simply observed, remembered, and when someone crossed the line, he erased them. In a town built on charm and collaboration, Eastwood built his legacy on conviction. Unshakable, unapologetic conviction. And for 5 people, 5 names etched quietly into Hollywood lore, working with Clint Eastwood wasn't just an opportunity, it was a test. Some of them failed that test spectacularly. Which brings us to the question only you can answer. Was Clint Eastwood right to keep his silence, or did some of those grudges cross the line? Let us know what you think in the comments. We read every single one. And if you want more hidden stories from Hollywood's golden age, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because for every name Clint Eastwood quietly erased, there's another he deeply respected. And those names, the ones he never forgot, the ones he truly admired, are coming next.